develop something like this and you begin researching it, you have to take a look at what you really believe reality to be. And that was probably one of the hardest things we had to do. But what people call paranormal, we don't believe to be paranormal. We believe it to be just plain normal. This stuff happens all the time. Paranormal activity happens all the time. Has science been able to confirm it? Or no, they haven't, but it's because science was never made to tell you what something is. Science is only made to describe how something's going to react, what future behavior is going to be, under what conditions. Science was never designed to tell you what something is. Philosophy does that, but again, philosophers and scientists can clash as well, so can religion. So developing this method, I mean, those are some of the hurdles we fight every day. Is science will say, okay, come on, consciousness is only in the brain. When the brain dies, consciousness dies, life's over. Okay, and who's answering my questions? Because there's nobody in front of me, and I'm not broadcasting my voice. So my range of speech is only, 20, 30 yards at best? So how is somebody somewhere completely away from me not only answering, but answering intelligently to the question I asked? It's a physical impossibility, which is the other part, which then challenges science. Staticom has caught the attention of everyone in the paranormal world, but it's also attracting scientists, because if we're truly getting answers, then consciousness has to survive death. It absolutely has to.
Oh, yeah. You know, and it's interesting, too, because, like, you can put religion on anything, right? But at the end of the day, if you took away religion and you took away anything, it's creation. There's like, there's a realm past our life. And everybody has different opinions and different views, but I feel like it's not so far away. It's like there's almost a veil, you know what I mean? And that's why I feel like our loved ones, like they can communicate with us in our current lifetime. And like, it's why there's all this residual energy, is because like, it's just left over. You know, everything is a frequency and everything is a vibration. And if we like really break it down to like a molecular level, we all are just energy, you know? And when we pass away, so I'm a CNA, and so I deal with quite a bit of death. And I know during the process, like I tell my residents, I say, you go to the light, and like you tell them, and every time I tell them that, within a few hours they're passed away, like they've gone to the light. I think just hearing that and hearing the confirmation of the energy being transformed, like it makes a difference.
Yeah, I mean, there's some truth in that, absolutely. The variables of words are one of the other biggest struggles that we had in religion as well. I mean, it doesn't matter what religion, but you've got people coming at us left and right going, you're talking to demons, well, you don't do that, you know. So is religion completely right? Hard to say. Is science completely right? Well, science has a lot of things figured out, but do they know everything? No, they don't. And the paranormal definitely falls in between both religion and science, where it's a great unknown. And those are the barriers we were trying to close up and get some actual hardcore proof to let people study. And that's the other great thing about Staticom. It creates what we call PPOs, or permanent paranormal objects, meaning we can ask a question from broadband white noise, which has no vocal data in it at all. No syllables, no words, no sentences, nothing. No voices should be there. But yet we can ask a question, we can get an answer with timing and relevance and intelligence answering the question we asked, which then is recorded, can be replayed for anybody. They can study it. And Staticom is completely repeatable, meaning anytime we turn it on, there are voices there. You can just sit there, listen to the voices talk, or you can ask a question and they will answer you. That's hard to debunk.
Do you have to be in a like certain location where there's a lot of energy in order for that to happen? Or do you
Nope.
feel like anywhere?
We have used it. You can use it absolutely anywhere. The reason, and let me go back to what I was saying about defining what reality is, because we had to do that in order to put these pieces together to make a philosophical background of how we believe this works to support the responses we were getting. But if you boil any religion down, and it doesn't matter what religion, but there's always the fact that there is an existing part of the human body, your soul, spirit, consciousness, whatever you want to call it. We believe that every person has a separate part of universal consciousness, meaning when you're human, you have your own ability to decide what your decisions are, what you're going to do, free will basically within your consciousness. But as you're living, that information gets transferred back to universal consciousness, and when you pass away, your individual consciousness returns to universal consciousness, which then explains how they can grab information. Like when I say, what color's my shirt? And they say black. Okay, if spirits don't have human eyes and they can't pull in through the rods and cones and get the colors reflecting, how do they know my shirt's black? Well, they know it because when I said, what color's my shirt? My brain, or my consciousness, my consciousness is still putting out black. And if that goes back to universal consciousness, they can just grab it and go black because it's transformation of information back and forth, which means I can be anywhere and reach anyone anywhere they are.
See. Okay.
Because it's part of the same system.
Right, because we use an EMF device on some of our investigations, and one of the things that came up where we were getting feedback from the EMF was that spirits can be anywhere in any time, that they can like travel. So that's kind of interesting that you're saying that kind of universal consciousness, or it reminds me a lot of also in psychology, there's something called the collective consciousness.
Correct.
Right, where we kind of all have this understanding of certain things, even if we haven't talked to each other. So that's really interesting. I've never heard of that before.
Yeah, it's a principle of what's called analytic idealism.
Okay.
And you've got different scenarios of what reality is. Like most scientists are physicalism, meaning they believe there's a 3D world that exists independently of us. And then and then consciousness is just a byproduct of the brain function. And then you've got panpsychism, which says everything has consciousness, which doesn't quite make sense, because if my kitchen table has consciousness and I cut a leg off, does that leg now have its own consciousness? And if it did, if I joined it back onto the table again, what happens? Yeah. So those are, well, right, but that's the biggest problem with science today. It's called the hard problem of consciousness. So if the brain can create consciousness, but the trees, the rocks, the earth can't, but yet the brain is made up of the same atoms, molecules, particles, elements that the earth and the trees are made up of, why can one do it but not the other?
Right.
That's the hard problem of consciousness, which science fights today.
I think that's where you come in, like, with the fact of, like, if it can hold the soul, you know what I mean? I don't know, it's interesting, too, because you, like, have people who are, like, the tree huggers, where, like, they feel that trees, like, hold all the information, and, like, when you ground yourself, like, I know, like, just taking a tree and just holding a tree itself is supposed to, like, connect you and ground you and, like, give our bodies, like, the things that we need. Like it gives us, it's like a release of endorphins, essentially. And so like connecting yourself and grounding yourself. I know I walk around barefoot all the time on purpose because I want to ground myself into the universe, you know, and its frequencies, you know, and energies of connecting. And whether that tree has a consciousness or not, I know that tree has a vibration, you know. Right. And that tree is it's a creation of Mother Earth, and it's a creation of our plane. So I feel like there's connection there too.
Correct. Yeah. Well, I mean, even science said, as far back as Tesla, that he said if you want to understand science, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration. Well, that applies, we believe, to the afterlife as well. I mean, people have been trying to communicate. Thomas Edison wanted to do a phone to the dead. Tesla was trying to create a similar device. Staticom is probably the closest thing to that today with what we can communicate back and forth.
And like, you guys are amazing. Like, how amazing. Like, round of applause. I feel like you guys deserve that. That's amazing.
But the point is that energy, frequency, and vibration, I mean, even science says energy can't be created or destroyed. It can only change form. That fits into the idea that consciousness was there before life. It'll be there after life. It is the energy. It is the energy vibration. And then the other part is what we used, white noise, broadband white noise. Guess what broadband white noise is? Energy, frequency, and vibration. So, you know, the pieces start to come together and the picture starts to evolve.
So this kind of falls in line. It is. This kind of falls in line with a question here. What do you see for the next 5 years for Staticom? Because it seems like it could change a lot of things.
Yeah, there is so much research yet to be done. We're at the tip of the iceberg, even though it's been 3 years already. But there is test after test after test we want to do. But in the short term, it's always trying to improve the speech just a little bit more, trying to widen the range. One of the first problems we ran into is when we first got it operational, there were so many voices speaking that we couldn't pick out any one of them. And so we had to find a way to get the right what's the word I'm looking for? The right length of the broadband white noise, but without missing responses. And then people would come to us and say, okay, well, what hertz do they speak at? They're all over the boards. They literally will show up anywhere within the entire broadband spectrum. So the more you limit, the more you may be limiting the responses you're getting back. And you don't want to do that, but you also don't want so many voices speaking at once that you can't tell what anybody's saying. So that was interesting. And I'm just going to try this just to give your audience a really quick example. But one of the questions that I wanted to know when I speak, when I was talking about that if they don't have human eyes, how do they see the color of my shirt? Well, what I wanted to know, if I'm not broadcasting my voice into some sort of energy wave or RF signal, how do they hear me speak? They don't have human ears. My vocal track is putting out vocal sound waves into the atmosphere, which another human, their hairs in their ears will vibrate. That vibration gets transferred to the inner ear, which is filled with liquid. That liquid pulsates, sends that to the brain, and the brain interprets it as speech. But if spirits don't have human ears, how are they hearing me speak? So that's the question I asked, and here is their response. How do you hear me speak?
Oh, wow.
So the funny part about that response is anybody who's done EVP work with recorders will know that at times they'll answer the question on the recorder before you even
ask.
asking
Right.
it.
Yeah.
That explains it.
Wow.
It has nothing to do with me vocalizing it. And we've tested that. We do what's called TDSI, or the Digital Seance Initiative, which is like, hold on, I gotta figure out how to stop sharing this. Okay. Which is like the old seances that used to be done back in the 30s and 40s. But instead of some person telling you what they're feeling, what they're thinking, what messages are being sent to someone, we will do it with Staticom. So someone can ask a question, they can hear that answer for themselves by whoever on the other side is answering it. And that just doesn't compare with some medium saying, well, I'm seeing or I'm feeling this. I think they want you to, when they can hear it for themselves with clarity, like what I just played, that's a whole nother game.
That experience really can be life altering. I mean, when you have an experience like that, when you really see it, you're there, you hear that. Wow.
Right. And then, of course, we tested, trying to see if we could reach family members that have passed away. That all worked. Matter of fact, when we figured out we had to slow down live white noise, my counterpart, Ron Iacovetti, heard a message. He thought it said on. But he had asked before, do you know my name? And it didn't say on. It said Ron. When we figured out that it was speaking so fast that we couldn't comprehend it, we slowed it down, and it said Ron, and then after that it said, Ronnie, it's mom. And then it said, it's Lucy, which was his grandmother, and then it said, we're connecting, and then there was a bunch of stuff after that. But that was all so fast that it couldn't be heard. So now Staticom, like if you do EVP work, you record it, then you bring it home, then you load it into your computer, you try to clean up background noise, you may amplify it, you may try to take out frequencies that are disrupting the speech, you try to clean it up. We've developed Staticom so it does all that live in real time. So it cleans it up, it slows it down, everything. So it is the closest thing to Thomas Edison's phone to the dead, two-way communication.
So now, is Staticom, is this like an app that you guys have, or is this like an actual device? Like, what is this?
It's a method. We don't call it a device because we can't ship one somewhere. It's a method that takes broadband white noise, filters it with a Frankenstein's monster of filters, but nothing in the filters adds speech. There's no AI, there's no nothing. It's just filtering sound, and out of that comes speech.
Have you guys made this like a thing that other people can use besides like a purchasable thing?
It's not available to the public yet, only because the research isn't done, and we don't want to. The problem is that 2 years ago, people, when we first realized this worked, people were like, wow, can I buy this? I want to buy this. The problem was 3 or 4 weeks later, we made an upgrade, and then 3 or 4 weeks after that, we didn't. And we thought there's only 4 of us. We've never meant to sell this. This was done for the research only, and we don't have the manpower to. If we did, just to put it up for sale and let alone answer 100,000 people's questions. Hey, I set it up, but I'm not hearing what we don't have the manpower to do that. So we want to finish the research first, then make it available for others to use.
Okay.
Right.
So now let's go back, and I want to ask, how did you get started with paranormal? What got you into paranormal?
My wife. So 15 years ago on Valentine's Day, we would normally hang out at a hotel for the weekend, swim, drink. She says, I want to do something different. I said, okay, what do you want to do? She goes, I want to go ghost hunting. I was like, oh, God. So first of all, my father was a physics, chemistry, and physical science instructor. So ghosts were not part of normal conversation because, of course, he was on the physicalism side of science, and they don't address those things. Well, my wife started watching the shows when they came out, Ghost Hunters, Ghost Adventures. She's like, oh, you got to see this. You're going to love it. You got to watch it. I would sit there for 2 minutes. I'm like, no, this is BS. None of this is real. Well, then she said on Valentine's Day, she said, I want to go ghost hunting. And I was like, oh, you got to be kidding me. So I had two choices. I could take her or have her mad at me until next Valentine's Day. So, of course, I took her. But
smart man.
I looked online, found a place in Phoenix that had a reputation for being haunted. And I thought, okay, what the heck? Booked it. Thought I was done. And then I'm like, wait a minute. I think they're using equipment. She's got to have equipment. So I bought her a bunch of night vision camera, EMF meter, digital recorder, and something else. I can't remember what the other thing was. So we went. I played along like I was having fun. I didn't believe any of it. But when we got home and she started reviewing it, she started going through the pictures, started going through the video. And what fascinated me the most was the answers on the recorder when I know we were the only two people there. There were two other guests, but we were up all night long. We were in areas of the hotel we weren't even supposed to be in, so we knew no one else was there. Yet we were getting answers to our questions. That blew me away. I spent like 2 months trying to debunk it and couldn't. So finally I said to her, let's go back one more time. Let's try it again. Maybe there's a vent we weren't aware of that voices were coming through. You know, we were looking at pictures. She's like, what is that? That wasn't there when we took it. I'm like, I don't know what that is. Maybe there was some stray light that was casting glowing figures. I don't know. But I said, let's go back. When we went back, I couldn't debunk anything even more. We came back with even more evidence. Like I said, that was 15 years ago. And we've just continued to expand. We got into the communication, the instrumental trance communication using spirit boxes. Then we developed other devices to try to get away from the radio, and then direct radio voice turned to Staticom, which there's no radio at all anymore.
Right. So you've had a lot of experiences. So you kind of started in Phoenix, but you've traveled the world. Another thing that I was really interested in, actually, Brittany and I were both talking about this, is your experiences in the Philippines in particular, because I've heard a lot about, you know, this spirituality in the Philippines.
Yeah, by culture alone, it's huge. By beliefs and spirits is also huge. My wife grew up there and, you know, experienced aunts, uncles, mom and dad, you know, having discussions about spirits, ghosts. Well, I think it was last time, maybe it was the time before, I don't know. But she had planned some of the really big haunted locations in the Philippines, which was a total surprise to me, but we went and she's like,
let's do
this night. We're going to the Diplomat Hotel this night. We're going to the White House this night. Not our White House. They have a hotel called the White House. But the paranormal activity was just off the charts. I mean, there's a clip on our YouTube channel where she's literally asking question after question. And because it was pouring rain that night in this old hotel, would take the water from the roof and then run it down these slots in the inside the building in the walls, and then let these little water rivers run out of the building. It created a white noise atmosphere. We could hear these spirits speak, answer as she asked questions.
Wow.
It was phenomenal.
Amazing.
Do you feel like that kind of inspired you, the whole white noise thing, though?
I didn't probably realize it then. I certainly do now, once we've used white noise and found it to be unbelievably effective. But at that time, I probably thought it was just a super haunted location because I could direct voice versus waiting to have to play back the recorder. But even on clip, I'm repeating what I heard them say, and you can hear me repeat it on the recorder. I'm like, they just said this, so it was amazing. It was really
Yeah,
is that one of your favorite experiences, or what would be your favorite experience that you've had so far?
Yeah, Diplomat Hotel in Baguio City, Philippines is definitely one of them. Queen Mary, the Bel Air House in Ohio. Love that place. I know Kristen Lee very, very well. Man, there's so many of them. I don't even know where to start. The La Posada Hotel, White Hill Mansion, Kreischer Mansion. Those are all on the East Coast. I mean, I could list places left and right, but those are probably some of them that really come forth first and foremost.
Have you seen any like apparitions yourself, like full body apparitions or anything?
Yes, I have. Matter of fact, the last one I saw was at a place called the Montgomery House. It was an 1820s house in North Carolina. I was there with our entire team, and I saw this 10-year-old girl standing on the stairs. The stairs would come down, then there was a little platform, and then they went down again. I saw her standing in the corner, and she was in full color. She was a little see-through, but full color, full bodied. That was the first time I've ever seen one full color, full bodied. But then I saw her again later that night, and just for the fun of it, hopefully I don't lose my camera, but after I saw her, this is what Staticom said when we turned it on. So give me 1 second while this pops up, and let me share this. But this also says my first and last name, so it shows you how different Staticom is from anything else. So this is what Staticom said when I turned it on and saw this 10-year-old girl.
Oh, that she can see you.
So they knew that I saw her and that I could see her. And that to me was really cool. But the other one I captured a three-dimensional shadow figure. We used to run the old Phelps Dodge Hospital down in Ajo, and we left the cameras, the FLIRs, all recording into a DVR system. And we slept in there that night, got up, took it home, started reviewing it. I have this 3D figure that walks out into the hall, walks right up to the camera, turns around, walks back, goes into the room that it came out of. It's incredible.
That's crazy.
Do you feel that you have is it just human spirits, or is it, and do you think that you communicate mostly with positive, with negative? Is there a mix?
There's a mix. I would say the majority of them, though, are human spirits. One of the reasons I say that, because people always ask us, hey, do you think you could speak to extraterrestrials with that? Well, I don't know the answer to that, but I know that we can take any language and we can translate it into any other language. Why? Because the environment under which we all live is identical. Their word for book might be different, but as soon as you can figure out what that word is, you can translate it from one language to the next to the next. Something like an extraterrestrial with a completely different planetary system, different atmosphere, different surroundings, you wouldn't be able to translate that because you wouldn't have knowledge of what it is to begin with. The same reason we couldn't translate the sounds dolphins make because we don't understand their environment, how those squeaks and squeals and what they mean to other dolphins. So could aliens use it? I don't know, but they would have to have complete knowledge of our understanding. I mean, if you ever talk to anybody who claims to have an interaction, they're like, well, they were speaking to me, but their mouth didn't move. So could that be a form of telepathy? Yeah, it could. Could telepathy be used to communicate through Staticom? Yeah, I think it could. But do I have those answers and know them for sure? No, I don't.
You just have to reach out to them.
Ask them for a sign. Yeah. Well, do you have anything that you would like to add and just make sure that people know?
Yeah, I mean, like I said, this is groundbreaking on so many levels. We've presented this at Paracons all over the country. We've done paranormal symposiums. We're going to Halifax next year to hopefully talk about this. and like I said, and then science has caught an interest too, because if we're truly communicating with consciousness, then it has to survive death, which means it doesn't disappear. So anybody who's interested in this, I mean, we've got YouTube channels. If you go to YouTube, just type in Staticom. If you want to see other paranormal stuff, you can go to Entity Voices Paranormal Investigations on YouTube. That'll come up. There is my Facebook page is covered with presentations. We give live Staticom demonstrations. We're doing one this Saturday in Sedona. And tickets are still available at least through tomorrow, I think, because it's Saturday or Friday through Friday. But yeah, if you have an interest, check it out. Take a look. It's fascinating stuff.
Amazing. Thank you so much for being here with us, taking the time. Absolutely fascinating.
I feel like I
learned a lot
so much.
I know, me too. Yeah.
I'm like, whoa.
Yeah, a lot to think about. A lot to think about.
Definitely is.
It is. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Being a kid, and I guess, I don't know, I'm 31 years old now, and like, I guess looking back as myself as a child, like, I guess I knew it was all real then, and I like embraced it, but now like embracing it as an adult is a little bit different, because I feel like it gives me a full view of life, and I understand that there is life after death because of all this, and like, you just, it's interesting for sure, and I definitely don't want to be trapped in any like crazy haunted mansion or anything. So I feel like it's interesting. It makes you want to lead a different life, I guess, in a way.
Well, yeah, I mean, some of the things you said make perfect sense. I mean, the first thing I heard you say was that, you're probably more open to the concepts as a kid. Mm-hmm. Two reasons I think occur from that. One, you're still relatively new as being human. Two, you probably came from where you knew all this existed. That's probably still fresh in your brain. And the second one is you're not conditioned by parents or grandparents. A little kid walks up and says, "Oh, I saw a ghost." The parents are like, "No, you didn't. That doesn't exist."
Right.
The brain gets conditioned to believe that none of this is real. And that's a shame, because I think it probably stifles some abilities that people may have that they lose because of that negative conditioning that none of this is real. It is more real than I think people have any idea, and we're hoping to be able to prove some of that.
Amazing. Yeah, and hopefully maybe make it so that way people aren't so fearful of it as well.
And I think that is
one of the issues.
Subject. Like, you really do get people talking about the paranormal stuff. It's a taboo subject. Like, I kept asking, we went to that thing, Valerie, and I had asked people, like, do you believe in the paranormal? And people are like, what is the paranormal? Like, I was shocked, like, to, like, hear, like, grown adults not even know what paranormal is. Like,
It's really changed, though, in the last 15 years. You can talk about it today in a manner that you could not talk about it 20, 25 years ago.
Right.
People start thinking you're crazy. You'd find yourself locked up in a little white padded room. So that was a good thing, and a lot of that came from the television shows that sort of opened up the subject matter.
Right. Ghost Adventures.
Right. Yeah, all those. Yeah.
You do still have to be very careful, though, right? Would you say that people do need to be sensitive to it, careful? What type of advice would you give to people, for example, who want to do their own investigations?
If they haven't done them before, find a reputable group and learn from them. Do not do it on your own. Are there dangers involved? Absolutely there are. But they're not to the degree of like how TV and Hollywood shows them. And when I say to the degree, I mean that everything is demonic.
Exactly.
15 years, and we've had to have house exorcised, but I would not consider what was in there to be demonic. I mean, there's a big difference between what truly is demonic and some grumpy old spirit that's causing trouble. But are there dangers? Yes, they just don't happen every week like happens to Zach, and you know, it's
Right.
just,
Especially because they go looking for it too, so it's a bit maybe
well,
a bit
They definitely
different. Yeah.
encourage. They're like, he's pressing those buttons.
it's for ratings, so it's
Right,
totally
exactly. Yeah, I definitely don't agree on that jumping, on the bandwagon of everything having to be a super negative. I think even too, I study psychology. I have some books in the background here, but I think your belief is what matters. So, and sometimes what you believe really is your reality. So you have to be careful. You can harm yourself on accident, right? Depending on how you interpret and what your intentions are towards, this other world, the paranormal, what we don't understand. So
yeah, I would agree with that. The other thing about life is that there is no such thing. Even science uses this. Oh, it's an objective reality. Not possible. There is not anything on the planet that you experience that is not subjective and only to you. It is only through your senses, your sight, your hearing, the thoughts in your mind. No one else can share those. So all of life is subjective only to you. And then what you do with that information probably shapes how you think life is and what's going to maybe occur or happen or how you're going to get treated. So what you were saying, I agree with. Your perception of what is going to determine kind of the outcome. But that's the other thing about life is that, when science starts talking about an objective reality, no such thing. Doesn't exist.
Right.
Everything is subjective. You cannot experience anything without it being subjective only
Definitely.
to you. Now, somebody else can say, oh, I saw that too, but it's still subjective to each of you individually.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, I definitely agree
Your
with that.
experience.
Mm-hmm.
It's personal.